So if you don't know who you are and what you're promising as an experience, then your customers are not going to trust you with their data.
So hi, my name is Ceci. I'm the head of data sciences for Moët Hennessy. I really, really heart data, but I also heart marketing. I'm also a professor at Columbia Business School, and my research areas are actually in immersive virtual environments and interpersonal relationships. So I'm really fascinated with how you build trust in virtual environments. And I'm going to pass it down the line straight away for everyone to introduce themselves.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Anita Erker. I'm coming from Serbia, Belgrade. I'm for 15 years in communication sector and last 10 years in marketing and from 2017 in Web3 marketing, dealing with and building on blockchain technology. Currently, I'm a Chief Marketing Officer at Utrust. Utrust is a Web3 payment platform. Essentially, we are working with merchants around the world, and we are enabling them to actually to enable their buyers to be able to purchase in cryptocurrencies and stable coins. So shortly, that's it.
Hi, I'm Emily Maxie. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Very, which is an Internet of Things consultancy. My background is in B2B early stage companies, and I'm really excited to be with you guys today.
Hey, everyone. So, yeah. Okay. Better? Yeah, okay, thanks. So, hey everyone, my name is Julia and I came here from Poland. I work in a company called Tensorflight. And this is a B2B AI property intelligence platform. So we basically analyze images from different sources like satellites, aerial, and we return a lot of data about the properties and we sell this data to global insurance companies. Glad to be here and looking forward.
Hey everyone, on? Yes? No? Okay. Jake Randall, I'm the COO at Common Room. Let's see, before Common Room, I spent 10 years building Okta. If everyone knows Okta, maybe you've signed in with it and you hate it. Hopefully you don't. So built Okta and was the GM of about half of their business, and then decided to do another startup, which is Common Room. And so we're a community growth platform. So if you want to talk about community, like you just heard in the last session, you can do that too.
All right, thank you so much for your time and attention today. So, raise of hands. How many of you trust Uber? Are we familiar with them? Yeah, car ride service. Okay, excellent, excellent. How many of us trust Amazon? Ooh, with data, maybe, sort of, sometimes. Okay. How many of us trust Twitter? All right, brilliant. So the topic of today is going to be trust and how brands build online trust in a digital age of privacy. All right, so we'll start with an easy one. We'll start at the end with Jake. What's a brand you trust and why?
I was going to say Amazon,
Okay.
and you already used it, but I have a 16-month-old daughter, and it's basically just a constant stream of Amazon packages to my house, and so I have to trust it because it makes my life very easy.
Cool.
I mean, for me, one of the brands that I trust and I respect is actually Google, just because I remember still those times that I had to search for information before Google with my first personal computer, and I think that Google just took us out from the dark ages, and that's why I respect this brand.
The one that comes to mind for me is Stitch Fix. They have a really advanced data science practice, and obviously they're dealing with some pretty personal data about how much you weigh and your height and things like that, and I just really respect the way that they approach data privacy and security.
I trust brands who are creating, who are giving you that feeling that they're local brands, but essentially they're having the exact same experience whenever else you are traveling. So one of those is Bata shoes, and the other one is online platform Canva. For the last 10 years, I'm using the Canva, and it's the same. Consistency, freedom, creativity, so definitely.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. All right, so I am so curious. So not every organization has a chief data officer, but I really love your comments regarding how an organization deals with data that could be considered quite personal. What are some challenges from a CMO or COO's perspective that if there is a chief data officer, chief information officer, or chief technology officer within an organization that you wish that would be more of a partner to you in your practice?
Yeah, I can go. So I think one thing that I think would be really helpful and really powerful as a CMO is help with anonymizing data so that you can use it in aggregate, but you're not singling people out and really identifying them as a person. And that's something that I think would be really valuable to pull from the technical side into the marketing side of the house.
I can pop in now. I was reading actually something quite interesting. Deloitte mentioned the new role, Chief Trust Officer. Chief Trust Officer, which is essentially dealing from data to business to marketing, guarding all compliance and privacy aspects. And I would definitely love to have one Chief Trust Officer as a partner.
Excellent. Any other points of view from a COO? No?
I was going to say a similar answer, which is just understanding the kind of data you have, and then essentially, leveraging it in a way that you're not going to violate any rules, right? Which is basically your point, right? Hey, I don't understand all these various laws I have to abide by, but I need to run my business. So can you help me, therefore, understand the data that I have so that I can go leverage it to meet my goals without getting in trouble, as it may be.
Okay. We also represent different B2B and B2C models. I'm curious, for those of us who represent B2B, how do you view trust with the consumer versus the customer?
I think that it's similar in the way that you always need to bring the customer relationships forward, and you need to always have this customer-oriented approach when you approach the data privacy. So in enterprise, in our case, for example, I think it's easier for customers to be in charge of their data, of course, because they have different departments, like business, data departments that took charge of all of these. But in our case, it's just building these relationships early on with each of the enterprise customer that we are having, and being transparent about what, how, and when the data is being shared and gathered.
I think one of the things that's interesting in a B2B business is you're negotiating effectively, or you're doing business with the CIO, the CTO of that company. But at the end of the day, the users of your product that are going to either log in or not log in, as it may be, have that consumer mindset. And so how do you balance how you might interact with your buyer versus the experience you give to your end consumer, right? Which is the employees of that company. And so I think I'll talk more about Okta in this case, right? That was a very highly negotiated, talking to the CIO, CTO conversation. But at the end of the day, their employees were logging in every morning to our service. And so we had to create an experience where those employees ultimately trusted us. It didn't matter what, ISO, SOC 2, name the acronym that you had. At the end of the day, if the employee didn't want to take out their phone and do the NFA, right, and do all that, you're going to lose that account. And so I think that's a really interesting part, particularly with, everyone's gone through this, the way that technology has evolved, that you're really serving two different use cases effectively when it comes to trust.
Yeah, and I can say for my part, so as a consultancy, trust is so critical. We're dealing with multi-million-dollar deals, and people are essentially just trusting us to get the thing done that they need to do. And so building that trust, building that reputation is vital, and without it, we wouldn't be able to exist as a consultancy. So I think it's really an existential thing for us.
True. I mean, similar. We are dealing with processing money of people. So trust is the ultimate currency. And I would say that honesty is one of the most important pillars, in the sense that I think now it's really expected of the market players to tell the hard truths and to be honest, no matter what is happening, and to be there for the businesses, because at the end of the day, those businesses are they're trusting us that we will make their business better, right? So in that relation, it has to be that they don't see you that you're working with them just because you want to grow your brand, but you're there because of the hospitality to support them to grow their business. So here, I would like to highlight humanity as one aspect, transparency as another one, capability that you will deliver based on expectations, and also that based on the promises you are making, you will again deliver and have the unique, constant quality of delivery.
I really love that framework. Very, very helpful. So I'm curious. So Julia had mentioned that you have to start that relationship early, and we have a really good framework from Anita on how we start to build those pillars of trust. How do you start? Are there any tips and tricks from any of your experiences on how to start that value exchange with the customer or the consumer for them to share their data and trust you with their data?
I think a really great first step is figuring out what your brand stands for, what your brand promises are, and start making sure that those are integrated throughout the brand experience. So if you don't know who you are and what you're promising as an experience, then your customers are not going to trust you with their data. And so I think that that's a really good first step, and it has to be across the company, across the brand experience, whether you're a product or a services company. And so I think that it's a good first step. It's not super tactical and tangible, but I'd recommend starting there.
I'll just echo that. I think that eventually you get to the point of talking about whatever the various acronyms that are out there, but it starts with essentially, like I think the Strava conversation was really interesting. There's 100 million people that are using Strava. I doubt any of them actually read the fine print when they agreed to the EULA, right? They ended up saying, hey, my peers, my community is using this, and so I trust it because of that fact. And I think that, and there was a lot of great conversation in that about what does the Strava brand stand for and how they pull it through that experience. And ultimately, trust starts with essentially like people, and like right now that's more of your brand because it's so digital.
I agree, and I also would start always with internally. I think we are rushing because of the huge crowded market at the moment, but starting with, again, honesty internally when building your business canvas or, anything else, value proposition, etc. And that definitely affects marketing, because I think currently there is a lack of ethics in marketing, in the sense that before anything is promoted or said, think 3 times, think 4 times. Maybe sometimes there is a slight difference between pumping something and telling how the things really are. And I think there is actually the balance between being a trustful brand and being the brand who is just saying, yeah, we can do it, and then we will deliver at some point. And the other point is, so this one is internally. Externally, I will just say social proofs. So when starting, I always give a priority to other customers telling about us than us explaining what we are doing.
I think that in our company, building the brand is like not even an option, it's just a necessity, because like without a brand in the insurance niche, insurance market, which is like highly like niche and very like a legacy market, it's very hard to sell anything to those global insurance companies. And in our case, it's like always like this kind of a trade-off between like how much do you want to protect the data and how much do you want to like get the value of sharing the data. We couldn't really rely on social proof in a way that none of the customers of ours want to be mentioned anywhere. And we couldn't really tell more about the data that we provide. We could only do like metadata describing what kind of data without the actual data points. And it was, I think that it just impacted the way how we view our brand, and this was the starting point of us building the brand and standing up to our brand values. I think that I really agree with Emily, and I think that this is really very important in our industry. Like, for example, we had this project last year when the war started actually in the Ukraine. And we started to work with the Ukrainian government in assessing the damages from the buildings and analyzing the damage, basically. And we did it just because we could, not because we wanted to sell the data. And we didn't really use the whole of the, like, I don't know, technology that we possibly could. But it was just something that we should have done as a brand. And this is what we did, and this is also somehow differentiated us on the market in a way that we are reacting on time. We are providing accurate data. We are flexible. So it actually made us think about the brand values, and it was the starting point for us to work on that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. What a good service. So I am curious, so you've developed, started a relationship with a customer or consumer, you started the trust. How do you maintain trust over time? Tips and tricks, or failures and lessons?
In my experience, it comes back to that brand promise, and if you break that promise with a customer, it's very difficult to regain trust. In the same way that it is if you lose trust with a person, you know? And so I think it's easy to say, it's hard to do in those moments where you're making business trade-offs where, okay, this is going to be expensive to really honor this brand promise of whatever it is, being customer-centric or, you know, doing what you say that you're going to do, all of these things. And so I think the best way to preserve trust is to do what you say you're going to do, which is, again, easy to say, hard to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. Of course, I think that brand trust is much easier to lose than to gain, and of course, much faster to lose than to gain. In our case, our customers, they really they need us to be very careful with their data. So we basically need to be very transparent, and we also need to always run different activities within the company to ensure that data is properly secured. We have in-company internal audits all the time. We have different regulations. So it's like a company-wide policy for us all to be responsible of the data that we currently have.
I'll take it, Joe. I would say, I think you're kind of talking about this, but just like proactive communication. So one of the things that we've done a lot at Common Room is just be really clear anytime you're seeing data, like how are we generating that? Where is it coming from? How can you control that? And I think that often you're moving really quickly with whatever you're doing, you know, whatever your product may be, to get that product to market, right? Whether it's a hamburger at Shake Shack or whether it's, you know, a more digital B2B, you know, technology. But how do you help people understand at every step, kind of like what's happening? Why are you seeing this? Why, you know, you just gave me this data. What am I going to do with it? And it's little things like that, that it's a tax to your product team honestly, right? Because I can ship this. Why do I have to explain it all to you or whatever it may be? But in doing that, I think it's those little moments that people say, oh, that's different. I haven't really ever seen something like that when I've used a technology before in our case, and that helps me feel more comfortable with what's happening. And so I think it's kind of brand at some level, but it's finding those like specific to the trust where places where someone might say, I don't really get this, and how do you proactively address that in that customer journey?
Fully agree with Jake. So communication, definitely. I would say direct two-way communication. One example is very frequent ask me anything, and putting a C-level to have an exposure and to be available for customers. The other important pillar is working groups with user groups, working groups. So depending on the industry verticals or size of the businesses, we are really trying to hear their opinion, but also to hear the feedback and hear the ideas, how we can be better for them to scale the business. And in the case of the Utrust and Web3 businesses, I mean, whatever we are doing is on the blockchain, so it's transparent and everyone can check, and the data will always stay on a blockchain. So we are, let's say, having that luck, in a sense, being using the technology to developing the trust further.
I love some of the comments regarding transparency. Now I'm curious, how much is too much transparency, or you can never have too much transparency? I'm asking the hard questions this morning, I realize.
You can definitely have too much transparency, I'll say that. I think thinking through what makes sense to share and what doesn't make sense to share. One of my mentors once said that transparency without context is just cruel, because if you don't have the context and you're just given this flood of information and you don't know how to contextualize it, it could be overwhelming, it can be scary, it can be confusing. And so thinking about not just being transparent, but what story you're telling and why. Why are you being transparent about this particular thing at this moment in time? And so that's sort of my view on it.
I have nothing to add to that. I love that answer. It's cruel. I used to read at Okta again, but we would have these negotiations, obviously, with our large customers, and our CISO would be on. And I would basically read our CISO the Miranda rights before the call, because I was like, you don't need to, show off, right? Essentially tell them, to your point of context. It's answer the question, make sure they feel comfortable with it, be transparent, but, let's move on. And I think it all depends on the situation, right? In a negotiation, I don't need their general counsel putting that in the contract, right? Whereas when you're talking to maybe the actual buyer, your actual partner in the business, you can have a different conversation. And so I think the context is also, you can look at it in that direction too, as to what conversation are you in and what kind of transparency you need to leverage in that moment.
The way I do it, I have a luck that customer success team is also under my site. So I usually collect frequently asked questions and all the different questions, as well as the feedback, positive, negative, neutral, and then sit with the C-level and review. Once we create a short list, then we need to keep those data transparent in the future, not go less, not go more, and repeating the process.
All right. So we'll do one more easier question, and then we'll throw it to the audience. So if there is one takeaway, one nugget of truth, one nugget of learning that you'd love to share with the audience regarding trust and how to maintain that trust with consumers in a digital age, what would that be?
I'd say be careful about what you share when you're being transparent, because it's very difficult to walk that back. It's very difficult to have something that you share annually or whenever, and then all of the sudden stop sharing it. So when you're sort of at the beginning of your journey, think through that very, very carefully.
Well, I can just say that secure data is secure trust. So I think that always make it as a really important in your company to have these data privacy regulations and be transparent about them, and be also and put customer relationships forward.
I would say tell the story that way, that it's easy for other people to repeat and to share the way how they see it, because at the end of the day, recommendations are where the trust is born.
You stole mine. I watched you a second before. I think I kind of mentioned this earlier, but this idea of, I'll use the Strava example for those that were in here. I think that Strava has built this great product and great usage because the trust comes from the fact that they have 100 million people, their peers out there. I think and that is something that I think we all, whatever. When I go out to dinner, I go on Yelp, right? It's the same idea. You trust that restaurant because your peers have gone and reviewed it and said you'll have a great experience. And I think that idea of brand, call it social proof, someone said that, I think is a really important aspect here in the digital age, because everyone's interconnected and can ask their friends.
All right, thank you for great tips. Yes. So I want to thank all the panelists, and now we have a few more minutes before the end of the session to throw it out to the audience. Are there any questions, concerns, controversies that we want to talk about regarding trust?
Hello, my name's Trevon. My question is, as more states move towards GDPR-esque type privacy laws like CCPA or the new Virginia one, how are you all strategically thinking about navigating that interstate, and how do you manage that when trust is somewhat different as you go state to state, as opposed to, I know before you could just kind of turn off Europe, but now it's it's very different when, Massachusetts may be very different than, say, Virginia.
So I think it's really hard to, first of all, everyone's remote, transient, whatever you want to call it. So that's a whole other complication, to be clear. So I think our approach has always been, I'll call it the lowest common denominator type concept, right? Who is the most advanced in, whether it be the new rules in Virginia or wherever, and just stick to that, right? So in Europe, we used German law as an example. Germany, and we had our data center in Germany because Germany was very strict. And we're okay, if we put it in Germany, then we're comfortable that we'll be okay with Europe in general, right? Now that can evolve over time, but that's an example of how we applied it.
Yeah, I think I agree. We are also working in different countries, like our companies, so we have different privacy regulations for different country. And initially, I would say our company is European, so we implemented all the GDPR regulations. When it first started, it was a huge mess because all the companies were reacting, and everyone was just hiring audit companies to set these legal regulations. But I think in the end, right now it's more of a necessity, and I think that the world is just moving into this direction. So I think that in the end it's just about how organized you are in setting up all these regulations within your company.
More questions? I have a question for Ceci. Nobody got to ask you the hard question yet. So for a company like Moët Hennessy, when you're dealing with changes in data privacy and privacy laws, how are you gathering the most effective insights to keep the business growing?
So I operate in the US, so it's a little bit different than it is when we're talking about Europe or GDPR and all of those reasons. For those of you who are or are not familiar, the US ALC-BEV space is quite complicated. Heavily regulated, we have a 3-tier system. So I have a B2B to B2C model. So I sell to distributors who sell to retailers who sell to consumers. In Texas, it's extra fun. There are 2 layers of distributors. So from that perspective, for us to be able to have direct relationships with the consumer and get those signals, it's quite difficult. And so for us, we think about our brand values and our brand story and really what is the value exchange for a consumer to engage with us digitally. And to be very honest, we are a luxury company first. And so everything for us is about that experience, that affect, that emotion you feel when you see the bottle, that emotion you feel when you hear the pop, the cork pop. And so it's very much about in real life experiences that we augment digitally.
Other questions?
Other questions?
Here we go.
I'm curious if any of you have a story of, maybe from another job if you don't want to talk about your current brand, of losing trust and then what it took to regain it, to your point about the challenge of that.
I mean, I can talk about, so at the end of my time at Okta had a security breach, which if you're a cloud security company is like the worst thing that can happen to you, to be clear. I think, we talked about transparency and communication. I think the biggest thing there is just, our CEO, ultimately, fun part of the story, I was on vacation with the co-founder COO, and we were going skiing together. And we were like, all right, we're just not going to go skiing, and we're just going to start calling all of our top customers. And we literally just, as an executive team, went through and said, who are the top 500 customers? Let's start there, right? Like, there's a little bit of, just to be honest, right? Who's spending the most money with us, right? That's the most important thing. And we just started calling the CIO of all those companies and spending a half hour with them talking about, hey, I want to call you personally, tell you what happened, here's what we're doing, and just like taking that step. Because again, I think trust comes from the personal relationship you build with someone, and that went a long way for them to say, okay, like, we get it, things happen, right? But you're taking the time out to call us, to walk me through. I have your cell phone number. If I have questions, I can, I'll reach out. And I wouldn't say it was like a great experience per se, but it wasn't the ski trip I thought I was going to be on. But I think it went, we didn't lose any of those customers, right? They all understood. They realized that things happened, and we took responsibility for it, and made the hard conversations.
I can also share 2 examples. One is with the government institutions. So a few years back, I worked with Ministry of Education, Science, Technological Development in my country, Serbia. And I mean, in my country, the trust towards government institutions, especially in the educational sections, are not so high. So what I did is I created a digital brand, which was completely different than the brand. And the values were the same, but the look and feel and the way how we communicate with the digital brand was different with the official brand. And then use the channels which are more accessible to the younger generations, such as social media, etc., which before that was never used. So what I essentially did, instead of communicating to the parents, I tried to reach out to the kids, which will then come back to the parents, and then with some other methodologies, such as working groups on the level of the schools, etc., also providing information to the parents as well. The other example is within the blockchain field. A few years back, one blockchain protocol, layer 1. So I don't want to share the name, if that's okay. It happened a 51% attack, meaning the community, the attackers, get the power, the 51% more power so the blockchain was in their possession, and even though the money was not stole, right, the trust was gone, and no matter what we did, honestly, even now, 4 or 5 years after, even though the company is still alive, they're trying, the trust is completely gone. So all what I would suggest them now, even though I'm not working any longer there, is change the branding, start fresh. Because, yeah, people are scared, especially with the new technologies and money. So, yeah, those are the two stories I thought it can be helpful. Thank you for the question.
Great. We have time for one more question. Any last question? Do any of you want to comment on what SVG should do to regain trust? Did anybody have an idea on that one? Or Signature Bank?
So I'll just say that we're a San Francisco-based startup, so it was a very rough 4 day. Yeah, I was really excited to get on a plane to New York and escape the last 4 days of my life.
Great. Really powerful content. Thanks, everybody.
Want to know more on what it takes to be the ultimate marketing leader? Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel for more insights straight from the biggest marketing minds around. Visit CMOalliance.com for even more resources to take your CMO career path to the next level.